even if the certainty really hurts, you're like, there it is again. I knew this was going to happen.
This is something that brings up something funny for me, because it just makes me think of, like, we would have at every restaurant I worked, there would always be the complaining guest that comes in. Mm-hmm. And the strangest thing is, a guest would come in, complain, just raise a big stink about this was wrong, that was wrong, all these things are wrong.
And then they come back next week.
Come back again. They come back again, and then they complain about everything again, and they come back again. And it's just like,
excuse me, sir, I think maybe you don't like the food here, and maybe you should go to a different restaurant.
Why do you keep what do you get out of coming back here? And maybe they just love to complain about why everything is wrong. It gives them
That's such a great example, though, because
that's what they're getting out of it.
We like certainty.
Yes.
I think we like our patterns because we like, it's like you're comfortable even in the discomfort.
Yeah.
Because it's the devil
Yes.
Welcome to The Weekly Transit, a podcast exploring the intersection of Western astrology and Jungian psychology. Astrology is a language that communicates how the planets and stars influence life on Earth, while psychology helps us navigate both conscious and unconscious experiences. Together, these tools offer the potential for self-understanding, growth, and transformation. Join astrologer Scott Tajarian and me, psychotherapist Gabriella Durso, as we dive into the cosmic forecast each week.
Welcome to The Weekly Transit, and thank you for joining us. If you enjoy our content and want to support the podcast, please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel, liking our videos, and leaving a comment or question. You can also rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, and if you'd like to donate, you can do so through Spotify for US listeners or DonorBox for those that are international. The links to do so are in the show notes. Gabriella and I truly appreciate your engagement. It helps us tailor our content to your interests and grow our community by reaching new listeners. The theme this week is intimacy, as we highlight the sun's transit into Scorpio. Of course, if you are curious to learn about how any of the following transits are affecting you directly and how you can work with the cosmic energy to navigate your way successfully, you can contact me for a reading at theweeklytransit.com. Welcome back, Gabriella.
Thank you.
How are you feeling?
I'm much better.
Okay.
I got a lot of good rest this week and just have kind of the tail end of a cough left.
Okay. For those of you that don't know, Gabriella was sick last week.
Just a cold.
Just a cold, yep. But thank you to everyone who reached out to me, wishing that she get well soon.
Mm-hmm.
Your
yeah,
well wishes.
Thank you for your comments.
Yes, they worked.
Well
She's
wishes.
getting better.
Yes, they did work.
Yes, absolutely. And it's great to have you back. It was
Thank you.
Interesting for me to do the podcast by myself, something I've never done for one of the weekly, I'm talking about the transits, and it's really something that in the past I don't think I would have been able to do, because I'm a projector, I'm a 7th house sun. I really need somebody there that I can talk to, and I can see the reaction or reflection that they are having through what I'm sharing. And so typically that would be very, very difficult for me. And it was challenging, but the thing is I want to thank all the listeners, because I've heard from so many of you over the years. And because of these interactions, conversations, readings that I've done for you, I was thinking of you, and I was holding you with me in the office by myself, so it didn't feel like I was by myself, and I was able to talk for like 50 minutes without any stopping, just channeling through the information as it came to me. And I felt very empowered by it. So it definitely helps me feel encouraged that if Gabriella is sick again or has a really busy week or whatever it may be, I would be able to, kind of hold my own. So, yes.
It's a really big milestone for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I know maybe it seems like a small thing, but it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's for you, that relational component is huge.
Yes.
And it does really help me as well. I think it'd be hard for me, just to say, it'd be hard for me to do an episode by myself.
Oh, for sure.
Too.
Yes.
Also because I don't have the astrological knowledge like you do. But yeah, the relationship, the mirroring and just having another human in the room, because talking to a screen is a really different relational experience.
Yes.
But as a projector, I think that maybe that was really good for you to really have to hone in and focus on your perspective and your point of view and the way that you see things without that interruption that can come from that relational kind of ping pong back and forth.
Yes.
And I find it really curious, the timing, that one of the key transits you talked about last week was the full moon in Aries,
Mm-hmm.
which Aries is about facing fear, being courageous, and doing things independently from others.
Yeah.
So I find that kind of like a wink, wink nod from the universe.
Yes.
Supporting you and maybe stepping into that in some way.
It's all cosmic divine timing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It really seemed that way. Yeah.
Totally.
I love it.
Totally. So before we get started, just a couple of announcements. I wanted to plug again Stina and Anna, the Sag Moon Sisters, and their podcast at wondering.star.wisdom and at sarcastic seagoat. You can follow them on Instagram. Those are their handles. But they're doing a special offering right now to support the victims of Western North Carolina from Hurricane Helene. Anna is from North Carolina, so she is very closely connected to that area. And Anna and Stina are doing pre-recorded readings for anyone who sends them a donation. It could be any amount. It could be $10, it could be $50, $100, whatever you feel called to donate to this cause. You send it to them, and they will, along with your birth information, and they will send you a pre-recorded reading of your astrological code and the transits and what's going on for you. So that link will also be in the show notes. And if you weren't able to check out my video with Delisa Hawking, the 5th generation psychic, that will also be linked in the show notes as well. I did a live Zoom call with Delisa, and we covered all the transits going into like June of 2025. We covered the astrology for the upcoming election, and as well as the inauguration in January and what it looks like for those events. So that'll also be in the show notes.
Wonderful.
Now to the week of October 21st to the 27th. The theme is intimacy. And the highlight this week is the sun in Scorpio. There's a few overarching transits that we've been talking about and just highlighting, in addition to all the faster moving transits that are still occurring at this point. This is Jupiter transiting through Gemini, aligning with Chiron in Aries. They're within 2 degrees of each other from September 15th to November 28th. This is the first time since 1870. Jupiter is about expansion. Gemini is about communication. Chiron is the wound and the ancient wisdom, which is unlocked through healing that wound. And Aries is the sign of self-confidence or fear, insecurity. So we are taking an expanded look within ourselves. What are the questions that you are afraid to ask yourself or those that you're connected to? That's coming up right now during this 2.5 month period. There's also, we're going to touch on Mars, which is aligning with Neptune and Uranus, also Pluto, though the alignment with Pluto is coming about more next week and the week after. But Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus are all aligning with each other in a way that I don't think it's happened in the last 25,000 years. At least it hasn't happened in the last 15,000 years. I went back to astro.com and combed through their ephemeris all the way back to 13,000 BC. That's how far back it goes. And I couldn't find another instant where these three planets were in these three signs, even at the same time, except for around 9,000 BC. But even then, they weren't aligning as closely as they are right now. So just quickly touching on that is, Neptune in Pisces is helping us reimagine the dream to our unconscious, to show compassion to our guilt, shame, regret, blame, so that we can believe in ourselves, have faith in who we are, where we are, what we're here to do. Once we're at that point, that creates the revolution of our self-worth and values, which is what's occurring with Uranus and Taurus. Once you are experiencing that revolution of values, now you are transforming your goals and ambitions. You're like, you know what? I'm actually aiming a bit too low. I need to raise the bar in terms of what I feel I deserve, because now my self-worth has elevated, so my goals and ambitions need to be elevated. And that's Pluto, the planet of transformation, transiting through Capricorn.
Kind of reminds me of, I think there's something called the love-hate paradox. Have you heard of that?
No, tell me.
It's this idea that in order to create change or to create or allow transformation to occur, that you have to have enough, you have to hate the circumstances enough to want to change them, but you also have to have enough hope or enough love in the potential for the change to have the desire to implement it. And I find that really fascinating and kind of reminds me of part of maybe the energy of this transit.
Yes. Yes. And you know what else is coming up for me right now is something else that you brought up yesterday.
What?
About the German medicine. Is that what it's called?
Oh, yeah.
It kind of feels like it's aligned with that.
Yes. So this is something I'm just very newly learning about, but there's this field of study or school of thought called German New Medicine. And it's sort of piggybacking off of this idea that I think comes from outside of that system, but essentially that your emotions, your emotional life affects your physical health, which to me is such an intuitive sort of idea. Like I feel that as a full body yes for me, but it's not it's not a mainstream perspective, right? But we know Louise Hay, who's an author that we both really love. She has a book called Heal Your Body. If you're not familiar with it, it's an index that shows you what emotions are what emotional difficulties are connected to physical ailments. And it's typically anger, fear, etc., that are contributing to illnesses, essentially. And German New Medicine is another school of thought that's basically expanding on that idea.
It's the hate part, that you need to hate something enough to want to make the change. And I feel like the hate is the illness. It's like the illness comes about from maybe the same place as the hate, because something needs to shift within you. It's like you were saying, the German New Medicine is the illness is the cure, in a sense, right? Isn't that what they're saying?
Yes. So I was tracking like what happened for me with my cold last week. And I got sick last week on Wednesday. And I had a really difficult conversation with a a family member on Sunday, a couple days before, that was upsetting to me. And it was interesting, from the German New Medicine perspective, when you actually get sick, that's actually when you're healing.
Yes.
And so whatever it is that made you sick happened a couple days before.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I tracked that in my own life, it made a lot of sense.
Yes.
But that the sickness, essentially, for me, it was like a runny nose and a cough, that was my healing process because my body was letting go of that experience.
Yes, exactly. And that's sort of what's happening with these transits.
Right. But there's also a piece here, like what happened for me during this phone call in particular is I think I became more aware of my suffering in this particular relationship. And I did reach a threshold of frustration or hate around that sort of dynamic or experience. And it felt really important to me on another level too, because in order to actually heal or to let go of something, you have to acknowledge how difficult or painful it is.
Yes.
You have to actually acknowledge the hate.
Yes.
Or the frustration, whatever you want to call that, acknowledge how real that is for you.
Mm-hmm.
Like how much there is a wound there in order for you to be able to heal from it.
Absolutely.
So thank you for bringing that in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is this paradox of hating something enough, but also loving yourself or loving a relationship enough to want to continue to do the work, to have enough hope that it can transform.
Love that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I feel like it's a perfect lead into our first transit of the week, which is Mercury is aligning with Saturn. So you think of Saturn as responsibility, Mercury is consciousness. So you have to become aware is what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So Mercury brings that awareness because it is your conscious mind. That's what Mercury is, the planet that rules the mind. Mercury is transiting through Scorpio. So we're becoming conscious of our intimate bonds, the people that we're most vulnerable with. Saturn is transiting through Pisces. So it's taking responsibility for what's going on in your unconscious. So Mercury, the planet of the conscious, is aligning with Saturn in the sign of the unconscious. So it's taking responsibility to become conscious of what's going on beneath the surface that is affecting your intimate bonds. And this is something that we're experiencing from Sunday to Wednesday, October 20th to the 23rd, with the exact trine, which is a supportive aspect. This is a water-water connection between Scorpio, fixed water, Pisces, mutable water, and it's exact on Monday, October 21st.
I also feel like this Mercury, just looking at the Mercury and Saturn kind of ingredients of this transit, that there's an invitation here for mental discipline.
Well, mental discipline, I mean, that makes sense because Saturn is the authority. So it's, there is this feeling of maybe the authority squeezing you in some way and say, this is the week to take a really hard conscious look at your relationships and how your intimate bonds are affecting you in an unconscious way, or how your unconscious is affecting your intimate bonds. Like, that's the work.
Well, and I think that's the point, is that becoming conscious of something, maybe there are times where it feels good and it's sort of expansive and it's like feels like this harmonious organic experience, but sometimes it does feel like work and it feels restrictive. And if you think about it, you're going from something that was unconscious, that was essentially in this sort of like womb-like state, right? Existing kind of in this soupy, dreamy realm. And then it almost like goes through a birthing process, which is very Saturnian, and then emerges into consciousness. And there is a restriction in that. There is a restrictive quality to being born, whether you're, going through the birth canal or you're literally becoming aware of something you didn't know. And then it's sort of, it's contained in your consciousness in a way that it wasn't before. It's like it's sort of caught in the web. It's like now I know it, and it's sort of imprinted in me in a way that is inherently restrictive. There's something about that.
Yes.
That feels really important.
Yes. Well, I think that restriction, like you were saying, like the birth canal, that is helping facilitate the transformation, which is Mercury in Scorpio. And so that kind of takes us into our next transit of the week, which is occurring on the same day, on Monday, October 25th, actually at 2 p.m. exactly, Pacific time, is when the sun aligns with the moon. So the sun is the planet of vitality. It represents the identity. The moon is the emotions. The sun is in Libra, which is the sign that represents relationships. And the moon is in Cancer, which is the sign that represents the past. The moon is in a position of power because it's in the sign that it rules, Cancer. So the emotions are very palpable, perhaps on Monday. And it's that emotional stimulation, let's say, that's going to help facilitate the transformation through the restriction of that birth canal of Saturn. It's like Saturn is creating that restriction in the birth canal, and the emotions of the moon in Cancer is like the lubrication that is helping push out the transformation. But there's something happening here where the way that you process how you relate to others is going through some sort of metamorphosis here.
Well, and the lubrication is the water, but it's really the emotions.
That's it. Yeah.
The emotions.
The tears.
Right. Is what moves the energy.
Yes.
Right.
When you're crying, that's water, right? So you're not tears of fire.
Well, and what do you do when the moment you're born is you cry?
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes. It's such a traumatic experience for the baby and the mother too. Everyone's
sobbing.
Yeah, exactly. So then piggybacking off of this transit and along the same time, because from October 20th to the 23rd, Thursday to Wednesday, the sun is also forming a square with Pluto. So Pluto's transformation, it's in Capricorn, which is the sign that is ruled by Saturn. So it brings that restriction, that responsibility, that connection to authority, or what it means to be in authority. And the sun, again in Libra, there's something that is coming to our awareness in terms of what we need to do to transform how we identify in our relationships. And this is a tense aspect. It's a square. So it's really like even on Monday when the moon is squaring the sun, the half moon, at the same time, the moon will also be forming an opposition to Pluto, which will be squaring the sun. So there's this real tension between the planet of emotions, the planet of identity, and the planet of transformation. So emotions coming to the surface to bring awareness to who you are. Once you have that awareness, you have clarity on what needs to happen in order for you to transform. Or for your relationships to transform.
So there's an interesting dynamic between the sun and the moon, in that the moon is reflecting the light of the sun, right? We know that from a astronomical
from looking out
perspective.
Into the, yeah, exactly.
Right.
Looking out the moon, where it's reflecting the sun. Yeah.
So what does that say about our identity? That our emotions are reflecting an aspect of our identity. Mm-hmm. And yet somehow they're often in conflict with one another.
Yeah. So the conflict here is like, you think about who you are in relationship and how that is reflected upon your past. Not only your past relationships, but your connection to your parents, the people that you were first in relationship with, and your ancestors, your parents' parents, your parents' 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 parents. Like that all filtered down to you. Mm-hmm. So when you think about yourself in your relationships and what you want to transform, part of that transformation might be recognizing, where am I in relationship that is similar to the way that my parents were in relationship with the people in their lives? And is there something about that that I want to let go of, to transform, to let die? The way that I do relationships is almost less reflective of me and more reflective of my parents or ancestry. Mm-hmm. And I wanted
it's
to
more
be
reflective of the past than the present.
Yes, and who you are or who you aspire to be. Like when we think of, like what we were talking about with Neptune and Uranus and Pluto all aligning with each other, we're going through some major transformations right now that have not occurred, at least in the last 15,000 years. So how do you want to reinvent yourself?
How do you want to reinvent yourself? But also, I guess I'm just wondering, to play sort of devil's advocate, the moon, if the moon is always reflecting past light, then how do we get there? How do we get to a current emotional state when it's always influenced by the past?
Mm-hmm. It's a good question.
Like how accessible
I think
is that for us?
Okay, here's the answer to that. It just came to me. It's about transforming your relationship to the past. You can't just say, the past never happened.
Right. I'm no longer informed by the past.
Those people that came before my mom, my dad, they didn't exist. You know, that's not what we're saying. That's impossible. They all came before you. They were here. But it's transforming how you relate to not only your own personal past, but how you relate to your ancestry and your parents. So you can look back at a memory that maybe was an uncomfortable memory. You're like, oh God, I hate that memory. I feel so upset about thinking about that. What can we do to transform our perspective of that moment in time? I mean, I feel like this is exactly what you do with your work in EMDR, where there's a trauma and you're hypnotizing or retraining the brain or creating those new neural pathways that allow the client to, when they think about that trauma, they're thinking about it from a different perspective than they used to think of it. So it's no longer has power over them. It actually empowers them. Right?
So EMDR is working on reprocessing information that's stored in the brain. And there are elements of it that are similar to hypnosis, but it is a different process.
Okay. But the bottom line is it's transforming how you process the past.
It is. And it's redistributing how information is stored in the brain. So when you have EMDR can work with traumatic memories. That's originally what it was developed to do, to work with single incident traumas, like a car accident or, someone who experienced the violence of war, for example. But now EMDR can work with any memory that is disturbing to you. So it kind of works on a spectrum from these major traumas all the way down the scale towards, disturbances. And those disturbances or traumas, when they're continuing to haunt you, it's because they're stored in short-term memory. And so they continue to fire all the time. And so in EMDR, we're essentially recreating a state of processing very similar to a REM cycle when you're sleeping. So there's an interesting connection to the unconscious there, because when we're sleeping at night and you're having a REM cycle, you are rapid eye movement. You're engaging with the bilateral stimulation of the both sides of the brain, which is what you need for EMDR to happen. And so you're processing in an unconscious state. And so what we do is we recreate that process in an EMDR session. And it works to kind of like shuffling a deck of cards. It like redistributes those memories so that they're no longer in short-term memory. They're in long-term memory. They've been processed.
Mm-hmm. So would that make sense, what I just said about the connection? I mean, I feel like these transits are sort of supporting
cosmic EMDR.
Yeah, in a sense, yes.
Yeah.
Because you've got Saturn in Pisces, which is the unconscious. It's taking responsibility for what's going on beneath the surface. You've got Mercury, which is the conscious, in Scorpio, which is the sign of transformation. You've got the moon in Cancer, which is the emotions and the past. You've got the sun in Libra, which is relationship. And you've got Pluto in Capricorn, which is transformation to your sense of authority and empowering yourself to take a different perspective of how you relate to others or how you want to be as a partner, as a friend, as a lover.
Well, and that part's really important, the empowering yourself to take a different perspective, because often there are different ways to practice EMDR, but one way is to use your belief systems as an entry point. And so when you go in and let's say you're really aware that you have a belief that you are unworthy, for example, you would go in and find all of the memories, all of the evidence that supports you being unworthy. And you go in and you do take responsibility by going into going into that pain and processing it and spending time with it. But on the flip side, there's a second component to EMDR where you're also going in and looking at what belief would you rather have about yourself? Like what would the opposite be of not being worthy? And then going in and actually empowering yourself through the EMDR to strengthen those adaptive beliefs is what they're called. And we all have typically evidence of the negative belief and the positive or the adaptive belief. But the neural pathway that's connected to the positive belief is not as strong because we know that we're wired for safety and survival.
Right.
So if we have a negative belief that's connected to like those first 2 years of life, 0 to 2, when our life was largely about survival, then of course that's going to be running the show for us because we're wired to survive. And we're less wired towards things that just feel good, right?
Right.
And so there is a process, like you said, of empowering yourself and like choosing to build up how would you rather feel and looking at that evidence. I mean, there's always circumstances. Well, here was a time where I did actually feel worthy. I got really celebrated on my birthday, and whatever the story is, whatever the evidence is of your worth, it exists too.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, we need to turn the volume up, or like turn the temperature up on those memories. So it is a really interesting, it's a fascinating process. And it does relate not only to the process of course, what does it mean to heal, but really interestingly with these transits, that's a spot on connection that you made.
Awesome. There's, I guess, I said the theme of the week is intimacy, but like a sub theme would be transformation. I think intimacy, because intimacy helps facilitate transformation. When you're intimate with someone, when you are sharing a secret with them, when you are sharing your body with them, when you are sharing money with them, it facilitates transformation. And so I feel like the EMDR work is a lot of this transformation in how you think, how you process the past. And the reason why I said the theme was intimacy is because the sun is transiting into Scorpio, which happens on Tuesday, October 22nd. It's so interesting because this transit with the sun in Libra squaring Pluto in Capricorn, I mean, this is the last time this transit's going to happen until like 2254 or something like that. It's hundreds of years until that's going to happen again. This is at the final degree, the 29th degree. And then the sun transits into Scorpio, which is the sign that's ruled by Pluto. So there is so much facilitating occurring here in terms of transformation in terms of how you identify in your intimate bonds. Am I lifting up the people that I'm intimate with? Or am I draining the people that I'm intimate with? Are the people that I'm intimate with lifting me, or are they draining me?
And what are maybe part of what creates your identity is what your beliefs are, right?
Say more about that. Yeah.
Well, someone who feels inherently unworthy, that's part of their identity. So I think this piece about belief systems is really interesting. Because we know your belief systems, essentially what EMDR is saying, without using this language per se, but is something that the spiritual community has been saying for a long time, which is that your belief systems create your reality.
Yes.
And we tend to think that it's our reality that creates our belief systems. And maybe there's some circular nature to that. That's kind of a chicken or the egg situation. But that's what we know. Part of what helps EMDR be an effective tool is that maybe you've had experiences that led you to have certain beliefs about yourself, but when you continue to perpetuate and believe that that belief is true, then your experiences that follow that are going to be in alignment with that belief. So when you carry that forward, and it becomes your identity.
So the question is who is your, what do you believe about yourself in terms of intimacy? Who are you as an intimate partner? How do you elevate the people that you're intimate with? How do you elevate the people that you share secrets with, that you share your body with, that you share your money with? Are you elevating them, or are you draining them? Are they elevating you? Are they draining you? This gets into some really deep, dark, sticky, icky areas. That's what Scorpio is. This is why, Scorpio is associated with the Phoenix rising. Because the Phoenix rising represents transformation from a very dark place. I can't think of Phoenix rising without thinking of Ben Affleck's giant back tattoo and the fact that he's a Scorpio moon. He's gone through some dark experiences in his life, but continues to rise up from the ashes, from his broken relationships or alcoholism or gambling addiction or drug addiction, all those sorts of things. In what ways would you like to transform during this Scorpio season from October 22nd to November 21st?
Well, and I see this so incredibly in your life, in the time that I've known you, because you're a Scorpio sun, just how much you've transformed over the time that I've known you, but you transform day to day. It's like you wake up from a nap and it's like, oh, this is another version of Scott. And I feel that way, like you're always kind of shape-shifting, or sometimes you look different to me, or I'm like, okay, this is like one version of Scott, who knows who I'm going to get tomorrow.
Yeah.
Not in ways that would be perceptible probably to most people, but I definitely see that in you.
Yeah, you've said that to me a lot. You're like, you look different to me, almost like on a moment-to-moment or day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And I can see it on your face too. You're like
I'm
looking
like,
at me
who
different.
is this person?
Exactly.
What is going on right now?
So we really want to think, like, how do I want to transform during this period? And who am I getting involved with? Who am I being intimate with? We really want to be careful about who we are exposing ourselves to energetically during this period, October 22nd to November 21st. Because the veil is thin during Scorpio season. There's no coincidence why, this is Dios de los Muertos, Halloween, the Day of the Dead. It occurs during Scorpio season. That's no accident. It's because our connection to the psychic realm, the underworld, is much more palatable. The connection to that underworld it rises up into our reality. So we want to be careful or discerning or developing our psychic intuition about how we are using that sex magic energy during this period. You want to be...
Yeah. You want to be really mindful.
Yes.
And I think about the actual death process, and that there are these portals that we pass through when we die, but the energy actually goes both ways. And so not only is there a portal from the living to the dead, there is always the opposite flow of energy occurring too. And so it is a co-creation, and being mindful if you're engaging with energies on the other side, or you're doing sort of deep shamanic work, that it's not just about the intention that you are bringing to it. It's also, what are you opening up and what is coming back through?
Yes. Yes. Exactly. So, again, the magic.
Yes.
The sex. Those places of true intimacy and vulnerability are essentially inviting or opening a portal to the other side. So it's important to be aware of where you are conducting this work, who you are conducting it with, and what is your intention in terms of the transformation. There needs to be, I feel like the more that you're holding to that intention, the more you have the ability to really facilitate the transformation in a way that's meaningful and, again, empowering to you and those that you're connecting with. And I think about this next transit which is Venus, the planet of relationships, aligning with the North Node, which is the soul's purpose. This is occurring from October 21st to the 24th. That's Monday to Thursday, with the exact alignment occurring on Tuesday, October 22nd. So there's a lot compacted at the beginning of this week.
Mm-hmm.
And we've just talked about 5 transits that were all Monday and Tuesday, basically, but they kind of ripple into the later part of the week as well. But Venus is transiting through Sagittarius. It moved into Sagittarius last Thursday during the full moon in Aries. Sagittarius is about honesty, expansion, adventure, exploration. So there is this urge to really set ourselves free and open ourselves up in our relationships. But the aspect to the North Node, which is the soul's purpose transiting through Aries, Aries represents the self. So it's about making sure that you are being yourself in your relationships. You are being authentic, honest. Through being authentic and honest, that is opening yourself up.
Because that is the only way to truly be intimate with someone.
Yes.
Is to be yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the sexual act, it's like you need that skin on skin contact.
Yes.
You're naked.
Yes.
You are not covered in clothing or
it's the truth.
It's the truth. Yeah. It's like
there's no hiding.
Yep. There's no conforming what things look like with Spanx underwear or anything. It's like this is your body.
Yes.
And what is more authentic than that?
Yes. So there's a real invitation for openness through intimacy. And honesty through intimacy. And through that openness and honesty through intimacy, that helps facilitate the transformation in hopefully the most positive way. Where the intention is to be honest, to be open, to be authentic. And in holding true to that intention through the way that you're sharing secrets, sex, or money with others and working with that magic, you are transforming in the best possible way because you're connecting to somebody in a way that's so pure that you are seen, you are accepted, you are loved because you love yourself. It's alluding to what you were talking about. It's like what you're holding within yourself is what you're going to bring towards you. And so if you're loving yourself through opening yourself up in a way that's honest and authentic, then you're inviting that back to you. And then there's love and authenticity, love for the authenticity through the bond. And that will help you transform. You realize, this is who I am. I'm loving myself and I'm feeling loved from another.
Yeah, it's that exchange.
Yes.
It's like the portal where it's a co-creation on both sides.
And it really, were you going to say something else?
Well, I was just going to point out that, a lack of sex in an intimate relationship is kind of one of the signs that there's something going on in the relationship when you stop having sex. And of course, there are logistical reasons why that might reduce if you've have children or circumstantial reasons. But if there's no longer a desire for intimacy with your partner, that's really important information to look at what's going on between the two of you. Because there's something that's inhibiting that exchange.
Well, I even think of, like you just mentioned, logistical reasons like kids. And we don't have kids, but I just imagine that if you have a kid, if you have a child, you've got to go through that transformation of who am I? Because now there's this other soul, this living, breathing soul in the midst of our lives. And I have to rediscover who I am with this other person here. and my partner needs to rediscover who they are. And it's not until you're able to maybe go through that rediscovery of self with the new child involved that you're able to come back to that sort of sexual, intimate exchange of really feeling comfortable in who you are through this new dynamic.
But typically, if you don't want to, like, let's say you're with a partner and there are no outer circumstances that are preventing a sexual relationship, and somehow the sex has stopped or it's changed in some way, there's either a part of you that you don't feel is accepted by them, or you aren't willing to accept a part of them.
Yes.
It's like the energy can't flow both ways.
Is it maybe also a lack of acceptance of self?
Sure. I think that's a piece too.
Yes, there could be a piece
to
of
withholding sex in a relationship.
I mean, I could think of it as like self-loathing. I don't want to be with this person. I don't want to have sex with this person. I'm angry at myself for being with this person. I mean, it could be any number of reasons, but I think it all boils back to what you were saying.
It boils back to intimacy.
Yes.
If you're choosing not to engage sexually with someone, there's not intimacy there to allow that act to occur.
Yes. And so what is at the root of that? That urge to withhold intimacy, whether it is through sex or even through sharing secrets. Like, we don't talk anymore. I don't know anything that's going on with this person.
Well, sex is just one way to be intimate.
Yes, exactly.
And for many people, you know, they might think of it that sex is the ultimate intimacy. And that's, maybe that is true for some, but it really is just one form of intimacy.
Yes, exactly. I just feel like, you know, there's a lot of support as we close out the week because Mars is transiting through Cancer, and it makes these final two alignments to close out the week. One that, well, both of them that they really carry over into next week as well. There's Mars's aspect with Uranus, which is more focused on this week, and then Mars's transit with Neptune, which is both this week and next week. So these first 5 transits that open the week are, it feels like there's a reward at the end of the week. And the reward at the end of the week is these transits with Mars through Cancer. Mars is slowing down because it's deep in its retrograde shadow right now. And so it's taking extra time to get through Cancer to Leo, where it's going to slow down in Leo and stop at 6 degrees in Leo and then retrograde back. So it's really taking its time through Cancer. It's really drudging up the past. Having the courage to make peace with the past, to face the past, to take a different look at the past, to transform the way that you feel about the past. And these last 2 aspects involve Mars with Uranus and Neptune. So Mars is the planet of action. Uranus is the planet of revolution. What action are you taking to facilitate the revolution? Neptune is the planet of dreams and fantasy. What action are you taking to facilitate the dreams and fantasy? Neptune is in Pisces, the sign that it rules. It's also water, like Cancer, where Mars is transiting. Uranus is in Taurus, which is earth. Uranus is revolutionizing our relationship to our self-worth and values. And Mars is energizing that, activating that through our relationship to our past. Now, the transit with Mars and Uranus is from Sunday to Sunday, October 20th to the 27th. with the exact sextile occurring on Thursday, October 24th. The transit with Mars and Neptune is from Wednesday to Wednesday, October 23rd to the 30th, with the exact trine occurring this next Monday, October 28th. Mars is also beginning to form an opposition with Pluto. That one is more tense. We'll get into that a little deeper next week. For right now, I just really want to think about, what is your relationship to your past? Mm-hmm. How would you like to transform your relationship to your past in order to revolutionize your self-worth and values and reimagine the dream of who you are? Showing yourself compassion for any guilt, shame, regret, or blame. Loving your guilt, loving your shame, loving your regret, loving the blame. Because when you acknowledge it with love, that's when you quell it. And it's ready to, okay, we don't need to keep forcing that out. You recognize us.
Right, the acknowledging part, but then also this alignment with Mars. Okay, so what do you want to do about it?
Yes.
Like
right?
if you have action. Right, if you have regrets because you missed out on something from your childhood, how can you claim that now? How can you then bring that into your relationship with your own children or with your own family or your own relationships? What do you want to do to heal that? To maybe give yourself those experiences now that you didn't have.
Yes.
So we don't just stay in the past, sort of mourning and grieving and acknowledging forever. I mean, that's a really important phase. But at some point you say, what do I want to do about that today?
Yes.
How do I want to move this forward in my own life?
Yes.
What can I do?
Yes.
To sort of rebalance the scales. What was I missing that I can now give myself?
Love that reflection. Especially just thinking about, like, what didn't I get in my childhood?
Everybody didn't get something
that I'm angry about.
Yeah.
At some point, you have to make peace with that. And Mars being action, acting to make a different choice. This is going to help us get out of that loop. You know, everyone's talking about, I'm in a loop. I'm tired of having the same old experience. This is happening to me again. Why does this always happen to me? Woe is me. This Mars in Cancer is really helping us break out of that loop.
Get off the merry-go-round.
The loop that was created in your past. This has always been this way for me. It's like, getting off of the merry-go-round here.
And making different choices.
Yes.
Like, I'm tired of being in relationships with emotionally unavailable people. There is some self-responsibility in that.
Yes.
What are you getting from that?
Yes.
When we're repeating a cycle, there's always something that we are getting from that. And even if it's just that perspective of, I get to tell the same old story of all the ways I've been wronged in my life, you get a lot from that. You get certainty. You get more proof that feeds your belief that you're unworthy or whatever the story is.
Wow.
So what are you getting from it? Right?
I love that.
It's such an important question in terms of self-responsibility.
Yeah. What am I getting from this poo-poo relationship?
Yeah.
Because I must be getting something from it because I'm in it.
You get to be right? Like when you go into a dynamic where you already know the outcome, you get certainty. Even if the certainty really hurts, you're like, there it is again. I knew this was going to happen.
This is something that brings up something funny for me because it just makes me think of, like, we would have at every restaurant I worked, there would always be the complaining guest that comes in. And the strangest thing is, a guest would come in, complain, just raise a big stink about this was wrong, that was wrong, all these things are wrong.
And then they come back next week.
Come back again. They come back again, and then they complain about everything again, and they come back again,
Like,
and it's just like,
excuse me, sir, I think maybe you don't like the food here, and maybe
Why do
you
you
should go to a different restaurant.
why do you keep what do you get out of coming back here? And maybe they just love to complain about why everything is wrong. It gives them
That's such a great example, though, because
that's what they're getting out of it.
We like certainty.
Yes.
I think we like our patterns because we like, it's like you're comfortable even in the discomfort.
Yeah.
Because it's the devil,
Yes, exactly. They like there was one guest who at this one restaurant I used to work at, very, very, very wealthy person. I don't want to say, like, no one would know who this is because they're not famous, but like their dad is like the CEO of like a major company that you would know if I said it. And they got banned from my restaurant.
Wow. For too many complaints?
Yes, because it was like, stop coming here. Like, all you do is come here and complain. And they actually came back and begged the owner and said, I'm sorry.
They then complained about being banned?
I'm not going to do, I promise I will change my attitude. I really want to come back to your restaurant. They let them come back to the restaurant and they stopped complaining.
They transformed.
And I loved working. I never saw this person when they were in that complaint mode. I was working there after they had been reprimanded and banned and then brought back. And I loved waiting on this woman too, because like she only paid in $100 bills. Wow. Crisp $100 bills. And if the bill was $120, she left you $200. And she doesn't want change because
so $100 bills were basically $1 bills for her.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the level of wealth we're talking about.
Like she lived at this really ritzy hotel in Beverly Hills that probably cost like $1,000 a night. Like she lived there. Wow. And so, but she would pay in $100 bills and she never wanted change because it's just dirty money. She doesn't want like that dirty money back.
Rattling around.
She's getting clean money from the bank. And so if the bill was like $200, $205, she'd leave $300 and like, just don't give me any money back. I don't want that dirty money, and so, wow. But I think there was something to her where she enjoyed that position of power and kind of looking down her nose at the people that worked there. And at some point the owner was like, no, we're not doing this anymore. You're gone. And they had to transform the way that they related at the restaurant. And she transformed her attitude. And she was no longer complaining. Wow. Yeah. So it could be something like that. I would love
for this person to come for therapy. There's so much symbolism in that.
Yes.
It's like you can't consume something without complaining or finding fault with your own food, your own supply of food. It's very interesting.
But then loved it so much it would always come back.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Fascinating.
So what is that within you? That's what I asked the listener. What is that within you? What is the loop that you're in that you want to transform during the Scorpio season? Who are the people that you're intimate with? How are you utilizing their energy to help facilitate the transformation or change that you desire within yourself? And how are they doing the same with you? What is that exchange?
And wherever your blocks are to intimacy, that could be information that lets you know what needs to be transformed.
Yes.
When you feel resistant to being in intimate spaces, what's that about?
Yes. What are your resistance to intimacy? That's a big question right now.
Right. And what is that? Yeah. What is that communicating to you?
Yes.
About you, about the other person, about the relationship.
Yes.
What needs to change?
Yes. Oof. Oof.
Yeah.
Yes. So all you Leos out there, all you Aquariuses, and everyone who has key astrological points or planets in Leo or Aquarius, there's tension here for you. Lean into the tension in order to facilitate the transformation.
Yep.
It's not just if you were born with the sun in Leo or Aquarius, if you were born with Saturn in Leo or Aquarius, or Mars or Mercury or any planet, the ascendant.
Mm-hmm.
When the sun squares that point, there's going to be tension, and that tension is to direct your focus, to bring attention, pay attention to the tension, so that you can move through the energy that's stuck.
Yes.
Lean into it.
Because ultimately that is what intimacy is with yourself.
Yes.
Right? Is being honest about recognizing your pain.
Yes. Wow. So much to think about.
Yeah, it's a powerful week.
Deep Scorpio. Let's get deep. All right. Thank you, Gabriella.
Thank you, Scott.
Welcome back again.
Thank
you. And thank you to all of our listeners for all your support. And we will look forward to hearing from you this week in the comments or on Spotify or on YouTube. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you so much. We'll see you then.
Thank you for listening to the Weekly Transit. If you're curious to learn how these transits or any other transits may be affecting you, or if you're interested in learning more about your astrological code, contact me for a reading at theweeklytransit.com. If you're interested in delving into the world of psychotherapy with Gabriella, you can schedule a consultation with her at GabriellaDurso.com. That's GabriellaDurso.com. Support for the podcast can be done through a monthly contribution on Spotify, rating us 5 stars, subscribing to our channel on YouTube, or writing a favorable review on Apple Podcasts. We are grateful for your support. This episode was produced by me, Scott Tajarian. Music written by Ben Leinbach from Listen Deep by Amber Herzog Lyman. Wishing you all the best as you ride the planetary waves.